Okay, I think we will get going. So again, thank you to those of you who have joined us today. Really lovely to see such high numbers. We're always appreciative of you joining us and giving up your evenings. It's lovely. So as I was just saying to those who were here previously, this is recorded, but please don't worry, your faces and names are all private. We can't see any of that at all, and your chats are private too. So please do ask any questions. I will have the questions here, and then perhaps if Sandra's okay with it, I will ask them at the end, and Sandra will go through the questions that you might have as well. So do type away and we will get those questions answered. So today, thank you so much. We're on week 2 of SPACE out of 7. And today we have presenting Sandra, who is from MAID Training. Sandra has been working alongside Study Hire since its origin, since it began. So I can full hand on heart say that his sessions are really valuable and they are really great and exciting. So I will not take up any more of his time. I will leave you to Sandra, and then I will be here as well. So please don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. But I will be on chat. So I'm going to pass you over to Sandra.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Hannah, and delighted to be here with you all this evening. My name is Sander de Groot. I'm going to be your host for the next around 55 minutes, and we're going to look at some strategies for parental support, specifically strategies around home study, home learning, home revision. A little bit of background on myself, originally from the Netherlands, spent most of my life here. Favorite subjects at school were art and physics, which led me on to a career in illustration, fashion illustration, cartooning, and then an art teacher for a number of years. Around 15 years ago, my career took a big change and I left art and design behind professionally. I got into psychology, a bit of philosophy, and another one called pedagogy, which is the art and science of teaching. So for the last 15 years, I've moved towards becoming a specialist in thinking skills and very much working with students, teachers, parents on how to be really efficient and effective when studying. So what I'd like to do this evening is share with you some ideas, but not really just for me to say them and hope you believe them, but everything we'll do this evening, we'll test it out and to see how it works. Because not everything I share works for everybody. Really, it's down to each student to test a number of different thinking skills and find the ones that are really going to fit for them, and figure out kind of your own process. A couple of details for this evening. Yeah, so to test out the ideas, have a pen and some paper ready so that we can jot down some ideas. Keep an open mind, test out all the exercises, and we're going to use the chat room to engage and ask me questions. So just to make sure that everything is working as it should, if you could open the chat function, you'll see that on the little icon bar, and you can bring up a little chat window. And if you could, if you can see me, hear me, and you can see the presentation, if you could type in a yes, yes, and a yes into the chat, and I'll note that it's all, oh, there we go. Thank you, Sayaka, Mariam, Ebner, Natalia, Mary, Becky, Khan, fantastic. Right, everything's working as it should, so let's get cracking. Just to mention as well, these strategies, I try and share them as well with my 2 daughters. I have one daughter in year 11, she's 16 and soon to take her final GCSE exams. I have another daughter who's almost 14 and she's in year 9. And, you know, they listen to me in different ways. My 16-year-old is quite open to listening and testing out strategies. My almost 14-year-old is la, 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 yeah, dad, heard it all before. So with her, I need to take a slightly different approach. So of course, every child is different, not only in the way we talk to them, but in the way that they're going to want to study and focus and so on. So let's get started. Tips to make studying and revision easier. We'll cover 3 things in this session: to know how to do it, and we'll look at some techniques that really help our focused attention. We'll have a look at when, and so how we structure time really effectively, and to know where. Of course, the environment in which we study has a big impact on the effectiveness of that studying. So we'll have a look if there's a few tweaks or changes that we can make at home to help our children use their study time really effectively. Let's get started with the how. So I'm going to share a few techniques with you, and they are specifically active learning strategies. Active learning strategies. Now, my first question then really is, what is active learning? And what is passive learning? Active and passive. Now, you might have heard of those, and I'm not asking for any perfect definitions. Let me just ask for your ideas. What do you think active learning might be? And what might passive learning be? If you're there on your own, feel free to pop your ideas in the chat. If you're there with a partner, or maybe even with your child, feel free to have a little chat and then pop your idea in the chat. What is active learning and what is passive learning? Okay, we've got some great ideas coming in the chat. Okay, so Mary says, active is participatory, right? You're doing something, yeah? Whereas passive, maybe it's just listening. From Rosa, we've got active is learning by doing. Excellent. Victoria says doing something, right? Perhaps, for example questions. Mariam says active works your mind, but passive is something which doesn't take much energy, right? Really interesting. Rosa says passive is just by learning by observing, listening. Victoria echoes that, just reading or listening. Okay, nice. And Sarah says application of knowledge versus just reading, right? When we're active, we're applying it, okay, rather than just trying to soak it up. And Laura says active learning is when you're engaged in a task, and passive is where you're going through the motions. Right, couldn't have explained those better myself. Excellent. So active is when we're taking part in the process. We're thinking about what we're learning, yeah, and we're maybe tackling it from different perspectives. Passive, as you've said, by listening, observing, we are passive in our nature. We're like the passenger. We hope that the learning gets done to us, rather than active is where we take a real active part in that process. Yep, we make things happen. So we are going to try a little bit of active learning. And as we do this, I want you to be conscious of how it changes your thinking. I'm not going to let you be a passenger. I'm going to ask you the kind of questions that our children should be asking of themselves as they study. You have to involve their minds in the process. So let's test something out. What I'd like you to do is grab your piece of paper, and I want you to write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on a piece of paper. To all students that I work with, I say, when you're reading a textbook, read with a pen in your hand. Read with a pen. And if you can, annotate straight in the book. Yeah, if you buy the book, maybe it's a revision guide. If you're reading a textbook and you don't want to write in it, maybe you've borrowed it from school or from someone else, then have a piece of paper so that as you read, as you come across something interesting, you jot it down. This changes the way that we read. Rather than reading on autopilot, yeah, read, oh, remember nothing because I was thinking about something else. Actually, as we read, we question it because we want to be pulling out little pieces. So let's test something then. Here's the exercise. We're going to read, question, and condense. In a moment, I'm going to put up a paragraph of text, and I will read through it once together. What I'd then like you to do is select 5 small chunks of information from the paragraph to help you remember the main points. Yep, so we're looking for key things, perhaps the who, the where, the when, the how, that kind of stuff. Yeah, the key little building blocks that we could use to reshape this information later on, simulating what we need to do in an exam. Yeah, bring those little pieces back. So 5 small chunks. When you're writing a small chunk, notice whether you're condensing it down to a couple of words or whether you write a whole sentence. Please move away from writing a whole sentence. If you write down a whole sentence, really, we're just copying stuff down. So I want each one of your chunks to be no more than 2 or 3 words. Okay, so you're looking for 5 small pieces, each one no more than 2 or 3 words. When I'm working with students, many of them find this easy and some freeze. They go through a little mental block like, oh, I don't know what to choose. You might notice that in your head too. And if you notice that, oh, I don't know what to choose, actually notice it, go, right, there's that little mental block. Best thing to do is to punch straight through it by writing down the first word you read. As soon as you write down the first word, we begin to question it. Was that a good choice? I wonder if I could make a better choice. And we begin to analyze. Just don't be a rabbit in the headlights. I know that a lot of students, when they get a bit overloaded with information, a bit like a rabbit in the headlights of where do I start? We've got to start somewhere. So write something down, then begins the process. So if you're all ready, here we go, team. I'll read it through and you choose 5 small pieces. Short-term memory typically means memory for what has happened in about the last 20 seconds or less. The figure normally quoted is that if we're given a list of words or numbers, then most people can remember somewhere between 5 and 9 items. In 1956, George Miller coined the phrase, the magical number 7 plus or minus 2, to describe what people typically remember. There are ways of increasing how much can be remembered, and Miller argued that each item a person could remember consisted of a chunk of information. For example, think about the number 07957396124. If you try to remember this list simply as a set of individual items, then it would probably be beyond your memory span. However, suppose you saw the number not as 11 separate items, but as 2 separate groups, 07957 and 396124. This is an example of chunking, creating groups of information which you find easy to remember. This capacity for remembering can be taken to impressive lengths. So over to you. I'll give you a minute or two. You write down 5 small chunks on your piece of paper. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, so hopefully you've written down 5 things. What I'd like you to do is to write one of those into the chat. Pop one of those items into the chat. Okay, we've got from Mary 20 seconds or less. Sayaka says the same. From Victoria, 5 to 9 items. From Ebna, Sheila, Jane, we got chunking. Dan chunking too. From Marion, we've got strengthening memory. Henrietta, we've got a chunk of information. From Catherine, we've got 1956, George Miller. From Becky, we've got 5 to 9 items. From Laura, we've got chunks of information. 20 seconds from Imelda, 20 seconds from Hannah. Okay, so we've got a number of different ideas. Okay, short-term memory from Jason. All right, a good one. Okay, let's have a look at our example. Now, this person chose short-term memory, 20 seconds, 1956 George Miller, 7 plus or minus 2, and chunking. So there's 5 things. Now, I'm not going to say that those 5 things are correct or right. Okay, these are the 5 that this person has chose to be the 5 things that they'll be able to reshape the information on later. Let me ask, did anybody write down the phone number? Pop a yes in the chat if you wrote the phone number as one of your chunks. Anybody write the phone number? I wonder. Yeah, right. Imelda did. Now, I'm going to guess that if you wrote down the phone number, you're probably thinking, not, I've got to remember the phone number, but I know chunking because I do it with my phone number, right? It's how I say my phone number to people in 2 chunks. So if I write down the phone number with a gap in between, it's the perfect example of chunking. I don't need to remember the number per se, but I want to remember that example of chunking because that's how it's really going to click with me. So, yeah, Laura wrote down the number as well. So remember, this is not right or wrong. This is your mind making the decisions. That's the bit that really gets the information in. So we've got 5 pieces, right? This person chose short-term memory, 20 seconds, 1956 George Miller, 7 plus minus 2, and chunking. What I'd like you to do is compare yours with this one on the screen, with the pieces that have been written in the chat. And if you want to make a small change or tweak it slightly, feel free to do so now. Take 30 seconds and do a comparison. Okay. When we compare our work with other people, what we do is we gain another perspective on the work. This process that we've just done in 30 seconds, if we really scaled it up, it's what saved my maths A-level. So my third, I did physics, art, and maths. Now, physics, art, because I loved them. I took maths A-level to impress my dad. Didn't work very well, didn't do very well in the maths. Well, I did in the end, but I was crashing and burning big time. And I think I was destined to fail maths. But I remember I would walk home from school with a guy called Freddie, and he was in my maths class. Now, he wasn't a close friend of mine, but we lived near each other. So we'd walk home together, me moaning about maths, him laughing at me. He was really good at maths. Now, without me knowing, one day he stepped up to our maths teacher, Mr. Borman, and said, Mr. Borman, Sanders finding maths really hard. I think he needs some extra help. And Mr. Borman said to Freddie, Freddie, if you help Sander, your grade will go up as well. Freddie thought, I'll have that. And so very soon he offered to me, hey, Sander, why don't you come around my house on a Wednesday after school for an hour and I'll go through some of those bits you don't get. Now, with Freddie's assistance, my grade went up, but interestingly, so did Freddie's, right? I went, I think, from an E, got myself a C. Freddie's went from a B to an A. It is scientifically proven when peer mentoring, peer tutoring, working together, not only does the person who gets helped go up, but the person who does the helping too. So if your child is able to study with someone else effectively, then it can be great for both parties. So back to this card. So we got 5 things. Wouldn't it be great if we only had to remember 1, right? This is what's called creating a mental trigger. One thing we have in our mind that when we think of it, it releases the other 4, that 4 come with it. So what I want you to do is I want you to select one of your pieces of information, one of your chunks, to be like the master key that unlocks the other 4. So you choose out of that list of 5, out of your list of 5, which one will be the master key. And notice the thinking that you do again. Different kind of thinking this time. Okay, if you've chosen one, pop it in the chat. I wonder what you chose as your master key. Jane, 20 seconds or less. From Marion, chunking, 20 seconds, short-term memory, chunking. Victoria went for 1956 George Miller. Ebner went for 7 plus or minus 2. Becky went for chunking. So we're all choosing different things. So it's clear that there is no right or wrong answer. It's your thinking that is linking them together with one important one. We're unlocking the other 4. It's that thinking that really locks it in. In our example, this person chose George Miller. So the hope is, because of the thinking we've done, if we're in an exam, we'll go, right, what do I need? Well, George Miller. Oh yeah, he's the short-term memory guy. 1956, wasn't it? He came up with that idea on short-term memory. Well, 20 seconds, right? What was his idea? Chunking. And there was that thing with the phone number. So one that we've really kind of nailed in, that will release the others. Okay, so we've done that bit of active learning, active thinking. let's take it on one more level. So let's say we've pretty much created a little revision card there, right? This person's got one on the mechanism of ventilation. They've got some bullet points and a couple of drawings of rib cage and what's going on. What would be a really good idea is on the back of the card to write one question that will test us on this information. So on the back of the card, that should really say, how does ventilation work? Or describe the mechanism of ventilation. So we write the question, right? Right. Let's test myself. Describe the mechanism of ventilation. Okay, it works like this. There's the inhalation, the exhalation. Oh yeah, and there's this as well. Am I right? Yep. Ah, that bit, I missed that bit out. That's the bit I need to revise. This helps us to spot the gaps in our knowledge and go for those. Someone in the chat earlier said doing past exam questions. Such a great idea, because basically we identify the gaps and we focus on those. So many students end up revising what they already know because it feels good. It makes them feel confident. Oh, I'll revise this because I'm good at this. Whereas really, we want to find the gaps and go for that. If revision is easy, then we're not probably doing it right. Revision should be tough. It should be pushing us to think. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to write a question that will test you on the 5 pieces of information that you wrote down. Notice the thinking that you do when you formulate that question. We're almost thinking like the examiner. Okay, and once you've got a question, feel free to write your question in the chat. Great one from Sheila. What is short-term memory chunking all about? From Hannah, nice and short, what is chunking? From Jason, like it. What idea did George Miller formulate? From Dan, we've got, how can short-term memory be improved? Really, really good. From Ebner, we've got, what is GM famous for? From Mary, how do we remember phone numbers? From Jane, how does chunking help short-term memory? Nice. And from Laura, what can I remember in 20 seconds? Good. Right. Let's have a look at our example. This person says, who is George Miller? Now's a good time to challenge our question, find out how it works, and do we need to make a tweak? Now, you're going to ask yourself your question, and without looking at your answers, you see how many of those 5 answers does it fire off. If I were to read this question, who is George Miller? Well, he's the short-term memory guy. 1956, I think. So actually, I think I can make a better question. So what I'd like you to do is read your question to yourself and see how many answers it fires off. And if you want to change the question slightly, then now's the time to make a tweak. And once again, the key here is notice the thinking that you do as you analyze your question and make a little change to get it to work even better. Notice how you rethink the answers. So 30 seconds, test yours out. If you've got someone next to you, test your question on them. Okay. So on reflection, I will take my question and tweak it slightly to what is short-term memory and what theory did George Miller put forward to help us remember things better? A little bit more long-winded, but as I reshape that question, as I try and get it to kind of fire off as much as possible, basically it's the thinking I'm doing in the background that's really getting these ideas linked together. From Sheila, we've got, what is Miller's short-term memory chunking all about? Nice. So that pulls in lots of those ideas. Miller and short-term memory and chunking. How did George Miller influence the short-term memory technique? Nice one, Jane. And from Hannah, we've got, what is chunking and how does it support short-term memory? Wonderful. So different ways, different perspectives, yeah, on the information. Really, that's what we're looking for. So what I'd like you to do is have a think about perhaps how you notice your children study. I know that my year 11 daughter has got certain ways that she's got stuck into, and some of them are working really well for her. And sometimes I need to give her a little bit of a nudge. Yeah, if she's sitting there just staring at the iPad, then I say, come on, darling, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, be active in the process. And she'll go, oh, yeah. Because she knows that if she stares at the screen for a while, she kind of begins to glaze over. My year 9 daughter's fighting this a bit, but she's slowly getting around to the idea of, if I work effectively, then I can do just as much in a short amount of time. And I want to do other stuff. So let me get this done well and done quickly. So have a think. What have you noticed in your own children? And how might you discuss some of these ideas with them? Okay, let's have a look at our next section. So let's have a look at the when. We'll have a look at structuring time in a really effective way. And to do this, we'll do a little experiment. I think this illustrates time management really, really nicely. So what I'd like you to do is grab your piece of paper and somewhere on it, just write the words, 20 words experiment, 20 words experiment, and then pop your pen down for me. So this is how the experiment's going to work. In a moment, I'll put up a list of 20 words and we'll read through the list once. When I'm finished, I'd like you to pick up your pen and write down as many of the words that you can remember from the list. Okay? So a couple of rules here. Only pick up your pen when I finish the list. And the second one is, if you're sitting with someone else, then this is a solo mission. Yeah, do this just on your own. Don't do it together, because if you're sitting with someone, it'd be really interesting to compare what happens afterwards. Okay, so here we go. Everybody, pen down, and here comes your list. Jumper, music, diamond, pigeon, turnip, football, pencil, match, Boris Johnson, eagle, pen, sew, necklace, eye, carrot, cup, sparrow, leaf, turnip, cat. Fatima says, does it need to be in order? No, not in order. Just write down the ones you remember. Okay. I am going to attempt to tell you exactly which of those words you just wrote down. Now, I've got a little bit of science that goes behind this. I've got this curve and an acronym FLORA. The F is for things that come first. My guess is that most of you will have written the word jumper. Give me a yes if you wrote jumper. I wonder who wrote jumper. Okay, we've got quite a few yeses, and one no, a couple of no's, a lot of yeses. A lot of us remember jumper because it's the first thing on the list. This is called primacy. We're really good at remembering the beginning of something, right? This is why movies begin with a big opening sequence, because they want to grab our attention. The L is for things that come last. So I wonder how many of you wrote cat? Did you write cat? Because cat was the last word on the list, right? A lot of yeses coming through. Loads of people wrote cat, and that's called recency. We're really good at remembering what happens at the end. So primacy and recency, right? Beginning and end. The O is for things that were outstanding. Things that were outstanding. I wonder how many of you wrote Boris Johnson. Did you write Boris Johnson? Whether you like him or not, if loads of people have written yes, 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 right? Because it's different from everything else on the list, right? Boris was, which stood out on the list. The R is for things that get repeated. Now, there was one word that I repeated. I wonder if you can tell me which word that was. Turnip. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Mary, Sarah, Victoria. So loads of you wrote down turnip because I said it twice. Some of you might have written it twice. So we remember things that get repeated, things that get repeated. One more is the A, and that's for associated. I wonder if you wrote down a pair of words. Have a look down your list. Have you got two words that go together? Have you got two words that go together? You got the birds, Victoria with the pen and pencil, Jane with the diamond and necklace, pen and pencil from Henrietta, pen and pencil from Sheila. Okay. 3 pairs, says Hannah. Football match, birds, pen and pencil, match on football match. There we go. So we remember things that are associated. Now, you might be thinking, okay, yeah, interesting, right? But how are we going to use this? Now, if your child works in an hour block, maybe like my 16-year-old, sometimes she wants to sit there for 2 or 3 hours straight as she's revising for her GCSEs. The problem is she's still only going to get a first and a last. Maybe something that stood out, few pieces she repeats or associate or link together. But when we take an hour of studying and we split it into 3 20-minute pieces with short breaks in between, then we should go through that flora 3 times, because we're going to have 3 firsts, 3 lasts, 3 bits that stood out. We should remember, or we can remember, up to 3 times as much, because we're working in these shorter, punchier sessions. The little breaks in between, they could be as little as a couple of minutes. Yeah, but I recommend that your child stands up, has a little stretch, walks somewhere else for a moment, just totally thinks about something different so they can refresh their focus and come back ready to go. Now, some people might stretch that 20 minutes slightly. Some people might find that their focus wanes after 10 to 15, but it's a great way of kind of building that revision muscle. One other idea that I'm sharing with students at the moment is this idea of spaced learning. Using those 3 20-minute chunks, but actually applying a different thinking skill in each. So for the first 20 minutes, we might read our notes. Let's say your child is studying for a chemistry test or for an exam, right? First 20 minutes, they read their notes. Okay, how does that topic work? Yeah, okay. Have a read through the textbook, maybe a YouTube clip. Right, got it. Take a little break. Come back, then spend the next 20 minutes transforming those notes, doing something with them. That might be, like we've done, to make a little revision card. That might be to write out a few key pieces and stick them a Post-it note on the wall of the bedroom. It might be to sketch out a plan for an experiment or for a medium or long form answer. They take a little break and they come back and they test themselves. How well did my revision work? Yeah, and they test themselves. So on that note, let's try something out. If you all please turn over your piece of paper, turn over your paper where you had the stuff about short-term memory. Here we go. In the chat, please tell me, what's the name of the guy? What's the name of the short-term memory guy? George Miller. Thanks, Victoria. Quick on the keyboard. Thanks, Sheila too, and Dan. Which year did he come up with the theory? 1956. Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Ebner, Sheila, Jane, Henrietta. Let's go for how long does short-term memory last? 20 seconds. Thanks, Sayaka, Ebner, Melda. Great stuff. Let's go for what did he call his theory of splitting things into groups? Chunking. There we go. Bomb, bomb, bomb. In they come. And one more. What did George Miller say was the magic number? Okay, right. Magic number 7 plus or minus 2 though, right? There's a range. 7 plus or minus 2. There we go. Thanks, Mina. 7 plus or minus 2. So that should give us a range of 5 to 9. So let's find out if George Miller was right. If George Miller was right, when you did the 20 words experiment, if you were to count up the words that you wrote down, if George was right, they should be within the range of 5 to 9, 7 plus or minus 2. So count up the words you wrote down for the 20 words test and tell me in the chat, was George Miller right? How many did you get? We got 9, 9, 8, 8, 12 from Sheila, 11 from Hannah. Wow, we got some memory masters in the room. Exactly 7 from Mary. Victoria says 9, but turn it twice. So she's given herself another point for that. You can do that, Victoria. Wonderful. So many between that 5 to 9 range. A few people deep in focus. Well done, Dan as well. Ebner got the 10s. Sarah says 7, teenage distractions. Indeed, indeed. So if you want to jot that down, yeah, feel free. That idea of read, transform, recall, doing something different. If your child does get bored easily and they find themselves staring at a book, then you might want to suggest something like this where they can work in shorter, punchier things and they actually have a focus, some kind of purpose. Yeah, quick read for 20 minutes with pen in the hand, of course, taking a few notes. And of course, 20 minutes. The good thing with 20 minutes is how bad could it be, right? It's only 20 minutes. We can all do a 20-minute chunk. So as we begin to break it down, it seems to be far less daunting as well. Now, some may feel 20 minutes, but you can't get anything done in 20 minutes. Actually, if you stack a few 20 minutes, we can do enough work, but we're just making sure we're staying focused. Great stuff. One other idea, topic versus time. Now, I found this interesting recently because I've seen that my 16-year-old daughter studies in a very different way to how I did. She is a topic studier, whereas I was a time studier. So my daughter basically takes a topic and she goes through it until she's got it. Might take her 20 minutes, might take her an hour, but she goes through it until she's got it. Here's an example of a topic studier. Here's an A-level student. In fact, they're trying to just go through whole chunks of subjects on each day. Here is an example for a time studier. So here we have a timetable for revision after school, and you can see it on the Monday, 4:30 till 5, media, 5 till 5:30, English, 5:30 till 6, a break, then 6 till 6:30, English, 6:30 till 7, maths. So this is time. I was time-based. My daughter's topic-based. I wonder how you would study. So tell me in the chat, what would be your approach? Would you study in chunks of time or would you study in chunks of topic? So quite a mix in the chat. I think it's pretty 50-50 here. About 50% of people time, 50% of people topic. Mary says topic at the last minute. So Topic-based might mean you run out of time. It's interesting, Victoria. Yeah. So I think always topic-based revisers think that the time-based revisers, how can you do that? Because you surely got to do it in proper kind of chunks that mean something, meaningful chunks. And time-based studiers think, well, if you do topic, I might just get lost in it. That's how I was. I wanted to know, I'm sitting down now for an hour, 3 20-minute chunks, right, and at exactly 8:15, I'm off. And that would push me to focus for that time. Now, maybe some people might think, I'll do an hour, but actually I'll sharpen the pencil for half an hour and move some paper around for a bit. So of course we need to be disciplined, but it's understanding that we all work in different ways. So is there anything from that you'd like to discuss with your child? Maybe even as simple as, tell me about how you're studying. Do you study in topical time? How are you structuring your time? Do you find that your focus wanes as you're studying or revising? And maybe there's a couple of ideas that you could try out. So let me give you a couple of minutes and jot down anything from that section that you think you might approach with your child. Okay, so we have one piece left, and the one piece left is the where. Where we study, of course, has a big impact on how well it works. What I'd like you to do is take a piece of paper and jot down what you think would be the ideal study zone. What makes a good place to study? Think about how we might arrange it, what there needs to be there. On your piece of paper, write down a couple of ideas. What makes an ideal study zone? Okay, now before you pop some ideas in the chat and we have a look at those ideas, let's just have a look at the room first. Top left, we've got a boy studying at the kitchen table. Top right, a girl studying in her bedroom. Bottom left, a girl studying in the library. Bottom right, 2 boys staying behind after school to get some studying done. Now, I think the room can change at times. What I noticed with myself is that when I was studying for my GCSEs, I was working in my bedroom. My brother was in the room next to me studying for his A-levels. And it felt like we were kind of doing this together. To take a little break, one just had to go into the next room, annoy your brother for a couple of minutes and go back and study again. And it felt like we were on this journey together, and it felt great. Now, when my brother finished his A-levels, he left home, and it was just me at home. And I found studying at home really, really hard because basically I felt lonely, and I didn't really want to study at home anymore. I wanted to study with someone, that we could kind of motivate each other, and that's what I was really missing. So I moved to studying after school. That bottom right one, I'd go to a revision session, study after school. I found it really useful. I'd go and study around a friend's house and got that going, and I'd study a bit in the library. It was probably only until I was, in my very late teens, early 20s, that I really got good at studying and focused on my own again. So this stuff can change. My eldest, she's great at focusing and studying in her bedroom. My youngest still fights with the distractions, and every now and then she stomps into the kitchen, puts her work on the kitchen table and starts doing it there. And if I say, "Oh, right, you're here at the kitchen table," yeah, it's the only place I can focus. All right, okay. Well, she knows herself. It'd be good if she could focus in her room too. but she knows that, you know, if she puts herself at the kitchen table, she gets rid of the distractions. Both of them say they study really, really well at my parents' house. If they go around to their gran and granddad, yeah, they're able to focus well. And my dad might give a bit of assistance with maths, and so different places at different times. But let's have a look then at some ideas on what would make a good study zone. So pop your idea and pop a few ideas in the chat. Let's have a look. Here we go. Jane says, quiet room away from distractions with a window. Right, let's do those together. Let's do quiet first. And then I've got distractions. I've got cool area. Okay, disturb, good, no disturb. Snacks, drinks, natural light, not too hot, comfortable, clutter-free, and supplies. Right, let's do those. Right, let's knock off some of the easy ones. Supplies, really good idea. Ask them what do they need. Yeah, if they've got the calculator they need and the post-it notes, some pens, get the bits together. Of course, we don't want them to say, couldn't do any revision, spent the first hour looking for a pencil. So we got the stuff they need, right? Snacks and drinks, good idea. My youngest always has a drink at the desk. My eldest never seems to get one. Every now and then I pop my head through the door. How you doing? Can I get you a drink? Oh, yes, please. Yeah, oh, I'm really thirsty. So yeah. That's that one and that one. Cool, good. You know, here's a good one. The cool. Let's do a little poll here. In the chat, tell me, what do you find the temperature best to focus? Do you like it slightly warm or do you like it slightly cool? Pop in the chat, warm or cool? Yeah, there you go. Again, a mixed bag. A mixed bag. Slightly cool, slightly warm. I would say I like it slightly cool, helps me focus. My wife, if it's a little bit cool, she goes, too cold, can't focus. She wants it slightly warm. Imelda says neutral. The thing is, everybody's neutral is slightly different, Imelda. From the chat, I can hear that some people's neutral is warm, some is cool. Fatima says, I need to get a blanket. Good, good, good. So the temperature, of course, let's do the quiet. Here's an interesting one. When I was young, I'd have music in the background, and I know it didn't help me focus. So I did a bit of research on this, and I found that around 50% of people want total silence. 50% of people want some kind of background noise. They want something in the background, maybe almost like white noise, sound of traffic going past. Some people put music on. Now, the issue with music is if there is a vocal track on that music, basically we're going to be singing along. We can't help ourselves but to listen to the words. So the best idea, if we're going to have music in the background, is to choose instrumental music and to turn the volume down so it just drops away. My year 11 daughter's got into this. She's chosen a playlist. She's found a playlist on Spotify. It's something, I think it's called like Study Beats. And she's got one called Study Jazz. And it's basically all soft, almost like dinner jazz. Not, you know, mad saxophone solos, but really calming. And she just puts it on, and that jazz kind of gets her in the work mode. She does some work, and when it's time to finish work, then she turns on her own tunes again. But yeah, instrumental, really good idea. Turn the volume down a bit. We had comfort. Right, here's a big one. Comfort. Studies show that people remember stuff best when we're in the same kind of situation as when we learnt it, right? This is why when you go and meet friends, perhaps in a pub or in a restaurant, you'll begin to talk about the stuff you did back there. Oh, remember the last time we came to this restaurant? Oh yeah, that happened and that happened and that happened. So you're back in the situation and you remember the stuff from back then. So in class, your child will be chair and desk. In the exam, it will be chair and desk. If your child does their revision or homework sitting or lying on their bed, they might begin to associate that kind of learning with that position, right? Now, your child can't go into an exam and say, this doesn't feel right. Sir, wheel in my bed. They're going to be in a chair at a desk. Best to do the studying in that kind of situation, that kind of position, right? Also, because the bed is where we sleep, your child might wrongly assume oh, this revision, I can't do it because it makes me so tired. No, that'll be the bed. Yeah. And if your child gets stressed or anxious whilst doing work or revision, they might think, or they might attach those feelings of anxiety to the bed. Yep. So that when they try and go to sleep later, they may rekindle those anxious feelings because that's where they felt them. So I strongly recommend a place to study, a place to relax. And it might be relax from the bed, study at the desk. When it's time to relax, don't stay at the desk. Yeah, move to the other place, relax there for a bit, go back into study. Try and keep those two places separate. And the other one was the distractions, right? The distractions. Now, a child's bedroom is so different to how it was when I was a teenager. Most children will have a smartphone, maybe even a crazy smartwatch, maybe a game system in their room, a tablet, maybe a TV, all this stuff, competing for their attention. I think the most distracting thing I had in my room as a boy was my digital clock radio. And I loved that clock radio, but we didn't have all these devices. So I think children now need to be more disciplined than ever before and have that kind of self-regulation thing going on specifically with the phone. I'll remove that slide because it's just it's very distracting. So my year 11 daughter has clicked with this at last. When it's time to study, she turns off the phone and puts it behind her on the bed. Studies show that the phone, even if it's turned off and upside down, if we can see it, our attention will be on it. We'll still be thinking, oh, I wonder if I got a message. Oh, man, I turn it back on. When was that eBay chainsaw finishing? A colleague showed me this. He said, take the phone, Sander, and put it behind the screen of the laptop. If your phone is out of sight, then basically it's out of mind. So my year 11's got that. My year 9 is fighting it. Every now and then, I come into her room and I have a little chat with her. I say, hey, how you doing? And she goes, yeah, I'm fine. And I say, you all right? She goes, yeah, I'm fine. And I say, what's going on? And she's got a phone on her lap, tucked under the desk so no one can see, but it's just buzzing away on her lap, which really means that she can't focus. Yeah, and so she's fighting it, but she knows that she wants to get her work done effectively and quickly, and so really turning that phone off is something that she needs to do. But she's fighting it. So what I'd like you to do is to have a think about, are there any small changes that we can make? Are there things that you've tried that have been really successful? On one of these sessions, not long ago, there was a mum who said, yeah, we have a time when all the phones are put away. Yeah, really good. We do that as well. In our family, it's 9:30, all devices to the kitchen. So yeah, good. That worked for a while. Then my year 11 daughter said, yeah, Dad, what about your phone? We got to put our phones away. What about yours? And I realized basically I have to lead by example, right? So now when it's time for phones in the kitchen, we've got a basket, buy the chargers. I put my phone in as well because, we got to lead from the front. We've got to show them that what we're asking from them, that we're prepared to do as well. So let me leave you for a moment to think about perhaps some suggestions, perhaps some things we can do together, because I think the phone is probably the biggest distraction for many students these days. What can we discuss? Now, I'm conscious we have just a last few minutes of the session. And in a moment, I'm going to hand back to Hannah, who will finish. But let's recap. We looked at the how. We looked at those active learning strategies. We looked at the when, and that was chunking up time really effectively. And we looked at the where. Small changes, small considerations we can make to the environment. Now, before I hand back to Hannah, if you would be so kind to complete a bit of feedback for me, there on the screen is a QR code. You can click on that one. The feedback form just takes about 30 seconds to complete. And if you want to have a link instead, let me just, there we go. chat, like so. So if you'd kindly do a bit of feedback, that'd be great. I want to say I'm going to be here for the next few minutes. If you've got a question, I want to say thank you very much, everybody, for joining me this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you. I'm going to hand you back to Hannah. Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Sander. Fantastic, as always. Really useful to hear this information about how to support young people with their revision, because it can be a really awful, stressful time, and even as equally stressful time for parents and carers as well, because there's a lot on these young people's plates at times, and putting it into action is important. You received your space work packs, and in there were some timetables that you can utilize, similar to the ones that Sander produced online just a second ago. Colors, post-it notes, all those sorts of things. And I found it really interesting too, because I'm doing a master's at the moment. So I'm sort of looking at this from my head, and out of sight, out of mind sort of seems to be the way it works. And the idea of finding a situation that's similar to the situation you're going to be in when it comes to your exams or you're working. I know many of us, obviously during COVID, have changed their ways of working, and there was a few times that I might have been on my laptop in my bed, but after about 2 weeks I realized that I was not being productive, so I had to set up a room downstairs that was similar to an office so that I could get that headspace correct. So I think that would be probably something I will pass on to my nephew when he's doing his exams, to get out of that bed and make his own little cool setup, have his mum bring in snacks and some juices and things like that, to hopefully get the best out of each young person as well. So like Sander said, if you have any questions, the chat's been brilliant today, so I haven't been able to catch up with any questions, so please do put anything in there that you have. If you can't think of anything now, then please send anything to Space and I can pass it on to Sander, or you've got here in front of you the contact details as well, so Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the website as well. I'm sure Sander will chat you through anything that you need to know, but if not, you're very welcome to go through me as well. So again, thank you, Sander, for that. That's really great. Thank you everyone for giving up your evenings as well. Hope you found it useful, and look forward to the next session, which will be on student finance. So student finance might feel like a bit daunting, might feel like it's going to go over your head, but we're going to completely break it down for you and hopefully make you realize that student finance is nothing to be worried about. Okay, yes, Julian, this is recorded. So this will be on our Study Hire Space website, which you can find on the emails I send through, and yeah, it'll just be at the bottom of the page there, which is a YouTube page, so you can access it at any time or pass it on to any friends as well. Thanks again for your interaction, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and Sander, thank you so much for joining us, and any questions, pop them in. If not, you all are obviously welcome to go, so thank you.
Hannah, thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure working with you, and exactly, thanks everybody so much for being really engaging in the chat and throwing your ideas in. It's been a pleasure working with you all this evening, and good luck supporting your children as they ascend that educational ladder. So everybody have a great evening.